Hey guys, don't forget to check out my second channel for my dog Casper the Friendly Floof. I'm going to be vlogging him from the time he is a puppy all the way to adulthood to kind of create a visual storybook for myself. But if you want to watch his progress as he grows up as well, make sure to subscribe to the channel and have your notifications on so that you can see when he comes home and watch him grow too. Have you ever heard something so crazy about a company that you started to think to yourself like, no way, this can't be real? With some companies like Chanel, many of you were surprised by what I had presented in the founder's very tainted past. And with other companies such as Young Living, the only surprise was just how far down the rabbit hole actually went. And my God, did it go far. So now here I am, sitting and thinking about how I've heard something so bizarre that I almost thought it was a messed up creepypasta. And that was until I found out it was real, and then it wasn't so funny anymore. I bet you haven't heard this question posed before, but here it is. Did you know that Quaker Oats fed children radioactive oatmeal? Welcome to today's video. So hey guys, and welcome back. If you're new, my name is Blair, or the Illuminati, and today we're going to discuss and answer the very question I had just asked you about one of the most famous oatmeal companies, Quaker Oats. Not the most exciting company, I will confess to that, but this is one hell of a historical event that I had no idea was even a thing. So I thought I would share it with you today, the story of how an oatmeal company landed on my naughty list. Let's get into it. Now, what could an innocent company like Quaker Oats do that's so harmful? How could they have ended up on my radar? Aren't they the company that sells oatmeal and other breakfast products? What could they have possibly done to have ended up here? Well, long story short, they fed children radioactive oatmeal. Now, I know what you're thinking. Blair, have you actually gone mad? Well, no, and I unfortunately wish this wasn't real. Sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction, and this is absolutely one of those times. But in all reality, this did actually happen, and I was just as shocked as you are when I found out about it. So let's start off with a quick analysis of Quaker Oats, the company. The Quaker Oats Company is an American food multi-industry based in Chicago. They were founded on September 4th, 1877 as Quaker Mill Company in Ohio, and the company has been around for over 140 years. Henry Parsons Crowell bought the bankrupt company in 1901 and held significant portions in management until 1943. In 2001, PepsiCo purchased the company and has owned it ever since. Throughout the years, they have sold their products of oats, oatmeal, cereal, and snacks. And that company has narrowed down its demographic and marketed smartly to them, that demographic being mothers and children, of course. They created an assortment of products to fit the needs of supplying children with school snacks and meals such as chocolate chip granola bars to oats with dinosaur eggs, the latter being a personal favorite of mine growing up. There was just always something so magical about seeing the eggs in your cereal hatch with brightly colored dinosaurs waiting for you in your breakfast oatmeal. At least it was that way for me. But anyway, back to the big bad. With a company that obviously keeps families in mind, you'd think the company would practice ethical treatment to adults, nonetheless children. So again, quite the surprise to find out they entirely disregarded their own demographic when they made a series of bad decisions that led to children consuming radioactive material. So let's dive right into the history behind the unethical experiments this company partook in. So these experiments happened at a location known as the Fernald State School, or at the time, the Massachusetts School for the Feeble-Minded. You can probably guess where this is going, but I'll give you a very brief rundown of what kind of school this was. In the late 1940s to early 50s, this school was created to help house and attempt to educate mentally disabled children and children who were abandoned by their families, and in some cases, both. If you were to take 5 minutes into researching the history of most specialized institutions that tried to help understand mental disabilities around this time, you would find a deep misunderstanding and how help could often turn into abuse. Conditions of this institution were unfortunately part of the norm at that time, and by that I mean the conditions were brutal. The staff forced the boys to do manual labor, underfed them, and abused them physically and mentally, because, you know, that's obviously how you help people. Then in 1946, a science club debuted at the school. One of the students, Fred Boyce, who lived there after a family abandonment, was eager to join the club. Boyce had hoped that the scientists might see the abuse of the school and put an end to it. Boyce and the other boys joined the club for its perks offered, and considering the conditions of the school, as I had briefly mentioned, this club offered one heck of an escape from the never-ending misery they would be otherwise forced to endure. Club members received trips off the school grounds, Mickey Mouse watches, tickets to Boston Red Sox games, and free breakfasts. And again, considering that the alternative was to do manual labor and get beaten by the staff, you could see why this was so exciting for so many of the children there. Boyce claimed, "We didn't know anything at the time, we just thought we were special." But of course, the free breakfasts were no ordinary most important meal of the day, because little did the children know, but they were being fed radioactive oatmeal. The Quaker Oats brand oatmeal was laced with radioactive tracers, and it was being fed to these children without their knowledge of what was really happening. According to Wikipedia, from 1946 to 1953, researchers from Quaker Oats Company, MIT, and Harvard University carried out experiments at the Walter E. Fernand State School to determine how the minerals from cereals were metabolized. The parents were told that the children would be fed with a high diet in nutrients. They were not told that the food their children were fed contained radioactive calcium and iron, and the consent form contained no information indicating this. The information obtained from the experiments was to be used as part of an advertising campaign. So this is the point where things went from "this is crazy, this can't be real" to "oh my god, this is real, I have no idea how someone thought this was a perfectly okay thing to do to children." This was an unnecessary form of unethical experimentation on children, and it was all conducted for an advertising campaign. And nonetheless an advertising campaign for oatmeal from a company whose target audience was, in part, the very individuals they were allowing to consume radiation. During the 1940s, scientists were excited to conduct experiments on human health. Brands like Quaker Oats wanted science to back up their claims. Now, Quaker Oats had been in some trouble before in the past for making false claims about their products to appear better than their competitors. But this time, they wanted real empirical data to show their oatmeal was better than the others on the market. And somehow down that train of thought, they came to the absolutely insane conclusion that they needed to test radioactive versions of their products on orphan children. Quaker, therefore, conducted a series of studies to state that oats contained higher levels of phytate to have better absorption of iron, while their main competitor, Cream of Wheat, created their cereals with farina, did not have this effect. The cereal business was booming at the time after World War II, and Quaker Oats sales grew to $277 million. That's already a lot of money, and if you translated that into today's inflation rates, that means Quaker Oats sales would have been over $2.9 billion in 2019 money. So we are definitely talking about some big business here. During this era, though, nutrition was a high priority in the minds of consumers. The Department of Agriculture established its first set of dietary guidelines in 1943, and they included oatmeal as a preferred whole grain. Advertisements on TV such as this one showcase the nutritional campaign they were going for.
Products, Quaker Oats and Mother's Oats. A hug, a kiss, and a good hot Quaker Oats breakfast. The best school day start you can give your youngster. For just as his soul is nourished by a hug and a kiss, so will his young body be nourished by a good hot breakfast of Quaker Oats. Yes, you'll keep him bright and alert for classwork, happy and healthy through the morning's active play with a nourishing hot breakfast of Quaker Oats with that wonderful oatmeal protein. Naturally, youngsters look forward to an occasional change for breakfast. So one morning, try strawberries blended right in while the oatmeal cooks. Another time, blend in pineapple or tangy applesauce. The recipe for delicious oatmeal and fruit blended is right on the package. Yes, it's so nice having a mother who starts the school day with a hug and a kiss and a good hot oatmeal breakfast made with Quaker Oats or Mother's Oats, the same high-protein oatmeal.
Quaker Oats wanted to disregard previous research that negatively compared them to cream of wheat. Therefore, they decided to fund their own experiments. And that is how they came to this idea to feed children radioactive oatmeal. Quaker Oats supplied the cereal while MIT received funding for their research, and the school benefited without having to pay for these amenities. In the 3 experiments conducted, the boys at Fernald ate oatmeal covered in radioactive iron tracers and milk with radioactive calcium tracers. The boys were also given injections of radioactive calcium. The first 2 experiments gave Quaker good results. Oatmeal was equal to farina when concerning iron and calcium absorption into the bloodstream. In the 3rd and final experiment, it proved that calcium entering the bloodstream goes straight to the bones, which of course was the result that Quaker was looking for. These boys at the time were exploited and clueless about these happenings. Fernand students were one of the countless radiation experiments approved by the Atomic Energy Commission between the years of 1945 to 1962. During these years, over 210,000 citizens and GIs were exposed to radiation without consent. While that is something that seems unimaginable in our era, back then, however, uninformed consent wasn't out of the ordinary. What is truly upsetting is that the boys experimented on did not even find out the complete truth about the radioactive cereal until 1993. According to the Smithsonian Magazine, the details of the experiments came out in 1993 when Secretary of Energy Hazel O'Leary declassified several Atomic Energy Commission documents, spurred in part by Eileen Welsom's investigative reporting on another radiation testing by the US government, and intensified concern over the nuclear weapons industry. Then came a report in the Boston Globe, and soon after, other publications were urging victims to come forward. Soon after, a class action lawsuit took place against the cereal tycoon. In 1995, the trial took place concerning the purpose behind the experimentation, Quaker Oats' commercial interests. During a hearing before the Senate's Committee on Labor and Human Resources was called for in January of 1994, Senator Edward Kennedy, the committee chair, asked why researchers had not chosen to conduct the experiments on MIT students or children at private schools. Kennedy was quoted as saying, "Aren't you appalled at the fact that the most vulnerable people in our society, which are young people, 7, 8 years old, that are in an institution, aren't you appalled that they were the ones selected?" Additionally, David Lister of MIT stated that the oatmeal experiment exposed the boys to 170 to 330 millirems of radiation only. This is roughly equal to 30 consecutive chest x-rays, which is quite a lot if you ask me, although I'm no radiation expert. But this evidence was obviously provided to try and discredit harm that may have been inflicted to the unknowing participants of these studies. Lister attempted to further build his argument, claiming the following: as to what are the medical and biological effects of that. With such low doses of radiation, it's very difficult. Kennedy continued to state that the boys had a 1 in 2,000 chance of contracting cancer, which was slightly over the average rate. It's also important to note a 1994 Massachusetts state panel concluded none of the victims suffered any significant health impacts. They also used the argument that radioactive tracers continue to be used in medicine to this day. Additionally, Lister backed up his case with the facts that the studies improved how we treat osteoporosis. By injecting 9 boys with radioactive calcium, scientists were able to see what happens to calcium after it enters the bloodstream by going into the bones. They also found out how it is excreted, primarily through urine. The radioactivity research helped scientists to understand calcium metabolization and provided the groundwork for later analysis on osteoporosis, according to Lister. By using this utilitarian approach to his arguments, Lister made the case that because these tests had helped make advancements in the treatment of other diseases, that it was justified to have unknowing children participants injected with radiation doses. This is the ends justify the means approach. Nonetheless, what Quaker Oats did was fund a series of studies that took unknowing mentally disabled children and have them eat radioactive oatmeal and have injected doses, all to further their campaign as to why oatmeal is better than cream of wheat. The issue to me wasn't the potential health risk, and that's also fairly obvious by the fact that none of the children experimented on actually had side effects from the testing, but it was more that the most vulnerable, those without parents and with mental disabilities, were taken advantage of, all for an advertising campaign. According to the New York Times, Quaker Oats continues to deny that it played a significant role in the experiments. The company donated the cereal and gave a small research grant to the university, said a Quaker spokesperson, Mark Dolans. I mean, listen, I would want to downplay the fact that I did that too if I had. This would definitely be part of my past that I would want to hide if I was Quaker Oats, so I can't really blame them for this statement, although I think it really downplays what happened. When the court case finally took place, 30 former Fernand students filed a suit against MIT and Quaker Oats. Even President Clinton apologized to the Fernand students in 1995 because the Atomic Energy Commission had indirectly sponsored the study with a contract with MIT. When a settlement was finally reached, it was for $1.85 million in January 1998. Even before the suit, regulations such as the National Research Act of 1974 were established to protect Americans from unethical experiments. However, that act was established long after these experiments had ended. According to the Alliance for Human Research Protection, the experiments at the Fernand High School, which almost certainly would not be permitted today, are one of the darker corners of Massachusetts' atomic legacy. Along with pioneering the field of nuclear medicine, some of the state's leading academic institutions and hospitals also subjected the terminally ill, the elderly, and others to radiation doses that are considered unsafe today, often with no possible benefit to the test subjects. Undoubtedly, times have changed, and many laws currently protect human rights when it comes to research. During the 1940s, unethical research was entirely doable. It's hard to imagine that this was a real thing that happened. It seems like something so far out of left field, but the victims, experiments, and places were all real. I do believe it is crucial to never forget the past, the good and the bad, so we can prevent things like this from happening again in the future. As I speak, I'm sure countless of unethical experiments are being conducted overseas or even in America at this very moment. And there are many things we won't hear from for years to come, if ever at all. And that's where I'm going to end today's video. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe if you're new. And if you want even more content from me, make sure to pop open that description box where you're going to find links to all of my social media, my second channel for my puppy Casper, and the Sad Milk collaboration channel with all of my best YouTuber buds just being cursed. Links again for all of that, as well as my sources, will be in the description box down below. So again, thank you guys so much for watching today's video, love you, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!